In this installment, we're going to learn a little bit more about the electromagnetic spectrum. So as we know previously, there is a continuum or a spectrum of electromagnetic rays or radiation. And there are distinct bands: the radio, microwave, infrared, visible, our friend, ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma ray. We also know that at the radio end, the long end, it's called long because the wavelength is longer. The wavelength is longer at the right end, and the wavelength is shorter at the left end. Now keep in mind, you could find other representations of this, and it would be reversed end to end. So it's not always at the right. We need to associate radio as long wavelength. And what we previously discussed as well is that the boundary lines here of radio and microwave and infrared, visible, ultraviolet, and X-ray and gamma rays is somewhat arbitrary. Not completely, but somewhat arbitrary. It's like a continuum of anything. The boundaries could be drawn almost anywhere. So let's look a little bit more deeply into the other information about this. We have we know that the high energy, in terms of the energy, it's low when it's long wavelength, and it's high when it's a short wavelength. Now one might simply imagine grabbing a rope and how hard it would be, or how much energy you would have to do to create a wave like this versus one like this. And that, I find, is very helpful in terms of remembering which kind of wavelength has the highest and the least energy. So the skill we want to have is to be able to identify a band and color, if possible, of light when we know its frequency or its wavelength. So what I have compiled here is a list of ranges of wavelength for radio. So we could see is it's going to be longer than 10 to the minus 1. Microwaves are 10 to the minus 2 to 10 to the minus 3. Infrared, 10 to the minus 4 to the minus 7. Visible light is all 10 to the minus 7. Ultraviolet, and so on. And then within the visible light can be broken into colors or subbands, each of which has its own wavelength. Now this is a more precise version, and these are kind of easy to remember. A little bit easier to remember, like so. But we can look them up, and this is a place to go to when we are looking them up. We have a little question coming for you next that will assess your ability to use this information.